In my last video, I explained why so many people struggle to save even on a good salary. Today, I want to show you exactly how we manage our money every month to avoid that. This is the 5-step system that's helped us go from spending everything we earned and constantly worry about money to paying off our mortgage and steadily building our pension and investments. Most importantly, it helped us finally feel in control of where our money goes. Hi, I'm Cici. Let's get straight into step 1. The first thing we did was review our actual spending over the previous 3 months. So we downloaded 3 months of bank and credit card transactions and grouped everything into categories. Things like housing, transport, groceries, eating out, and shopping. Then we totaled up each category and ranked them from biggest to smallest. That immediately showed us where most of our money was actually going. The reason we do this first is that a lot of people start with a goal like, I want to save £500 this month. The problem is that's still too vague. It doesn't tell you where that £500 is actually going to come from. Should you spend less on groceries, cut back on eating out, or reduce your housing costs? When the goal is that broad, it's actually quite hard to know where to start. And when you don't know where to start, it's very easy to end up changing nothing. It's a bit like saying, I want to get fitter. Until you turn that into something specific, like going for a 30-minute run every morning, it's hard to know what to do next. Saving money works exactly the same way. Once you've reviewed your spending, you can turn one big goal into much smaller, much more specific ones. Instead of saying, I want to save $500 this month, you might realize your real target is simply reducing your eating out from £400 a month to £200, or capping your clothes shopping at £100. Once the goal is that specific, it's much easier to figure out what to do next, and much more likely that you will actually stick to it. Of course, not every expense is easy to reduce overnight. If your mortgage or rent is one of your biggest costs, you probably can't change it tomorrow. But reviewing your spending helps you see which costs are worth focusing on first, so you can start bringing them down over time. The second part of this review is looking for what I call money leaks. These are usually small payments or spending habits that don't seem like a big deal, but they quietly add up over time. Maybe you are paying for a gym membership, but only go once a month. Or perhaps a subscription is still renewing every month without you realizing. For me, it was beauty products. Looking back over 3 months, I realized I'd bought far more than I'd actually used. So I stopped buying so much and saved around £100 a month. The good news is, you don't need to do this every month. Reviewing your spending every 3 months is usually enough. If you've never done it before, I'd recommend doing it for about a year. So you capture the expenses that only happen once a year, things like holidays, Christmas, or annual insurance. After that first year, you'll probably know your spending well enough that you won't need such detailed reviews anymore. Once we'd reviewed our spending, the next thing we built was an emergency fund. So why is an emergency fund so important? Imagine this happens next month. Your car suddenly needs repairing, something breaks in the house, or you are suddenly made redundant. Without an emergency fund, what happens? You put it on credit card, or you take out a personal loan, or you dip into money that was meant for your investments or other savings. And suddenly, one unexpected expense throws your whole savings plan off track. That's because instead of putting money into a savings, you have to use it to pay off debt. That's exactly what an emergency fund helps you avoid. Now the next question is usually, how much should I have? You often hear people say you should aim for 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, and I think that's a good starting point. But the important question is, what actually counts as your essential expenses? By that, I mean things you'd still have to pay even with no income at all. Your mortgage or rent, groceries, utility bills, transport, and insurance. Add those up and you've got your essential monthly expenses. From there, working out your emergency fund is simple. Multiply multiply that by 3 to 6 months and you've got your emergency fund target. And that's exactly why we started with step 1. Once you've reviewed your spending, you already have all the numbers you need. One more thing I'd say is this: you don't have to build it overnight. If your cash flow is tight right now, that's completely okay. Start with whatever you can. Maybe your first goal is 1 month's essential expenses, or even just enough to deal with a smaller emergency without panicking. Then keep adding to it little by little each month. The chances are an emergency won't happen tomorrow. It might be 6 months away or even a year away. And by then, you may already have built up enough to deal with it. So don't let the idea of needing a perfect emergency fund stop you from getting started. For me, having something is always better than having nothing. Once we had that safety net sorted, the next thing we changed was something really simple, but it made a surprisingly big difference to how in control we felt each month. Instead of waiting for our bills to come out throughout the month, we moved as many of our regular payments as possible to the beginning of the month. Things like our mortgage, utility bills, credit card repayments, and the TV license. Basically anything we knew we'd have to pay that month. So why does that make such a difference? For us, there are 2 big reasons. The first is simple. Imagine it's payday. You check your bank account and see £3,000 sitting there. It feels like you've got plenty of money to spend, but in reality, your mortgage, utility bills, and other regular payments just haven't left your account yet. Now you've actually only got £850 to work with this month, not £3,000. That's why we prefer paying those bills first. As we always say, some of that money already has a job, it just hasn't left the account yet. Paying those bills first gives us a much more realistic picture of how much money we actually have available. If you forget that, it's very easy to overspend early in the month without even realizing it. The second reason is that we spot problems much earlier. Maybe one of the bills has gone up, maybe there is less money left than we expected. If we found that out at the beginning of the month, we've still got the rest of the month to adjust our spending before it becomes a problem. For us, this one small change made the rest of every month feel much more predictable. Once all those regular payments are taken care of, the next thing we do is pay our future selves. For us, that future has 2 parts. First, we save for our new future. We do that by building what are often called sinking funds. That simply means putting a little money aside each month for the bigger expenses we know are coming. Things like holidays, replacing the car one day, home improvements, or any other big expense we are planning for. Instead of waiting until those expenses arrive and hoping we can afford them, or putting them on a credit card, we save for them in advance. For example, if we know we'd like to spend around £2,400 on a holiday next year, we simply divide that by 12 and save £200 a month. That way, when the time comes, the money is already there, so we don't have to scramble to find it. Second, we invest for our long-term future. For us, that mainly means our pension and our stock and shares ISA. If you have a workplace pension, the first thing I'd suggest is making sure you are contributing enough to get the full employer match. That's one of the best benefits many employers offer, and it's well worth taking advantage of. If part of your income is taxed at a higher rate and you don't need that money in the short term, I'd also consider making additional pension contributions because of the tax advantages. We also invest in our stock and shares ISA every month. Over the long term, that's what turns savings into real wealth. The earlier the money goes in, the more time it has to grow. Of course, not everyone can afford to do all of this straight away. When you are first building your own system, money will probably feel a bit tight, and that's completely normal. In that situation, I'd rather build my emergency fund first. If that means taking a cheap holiday, maybe £1,500 instead of £2,400, or investing a little less for now, I'd much rather do that. Because once that emergency fund is in place, everything else has the chance to build up over time. Without it, one unexpected expense can quickly wipe out months of progress. So once we've taken care of everything we've talked about so far, whatever's left becomes our budget for the month. This is the money we've got available for our everyday spending, things like groceries, eating out, shopping, and entertainment. And this is exactly where those numbers from step 1 become so useful. A lot of budgets fail not because people lack discipline, but because they were never realistic in the first place. If you normally spend around £500 a month on groceries, but you put £200 in your budget, that budget is dead on arrival. You haven't built a budget, you've just written down a wish. Instead, we start with our real spending, then make small realistic improvements. So if step 1 showed we were spending £350 a month on eating out, we might set the budget at £300, not £100. A good budget isn't about never spending money, it's about spending intentionally, knowing where your money is going and spotting problems before they become expensive habits. One thing that's helped us a lot, whenever we're about to go over budget, we always stop and ask ourselves first, do we actually want this, or are we just buying it out of habit? That one question alone has saved us hundreds of pounds over the years. One final thing that's worked really well for us is never budgeting every single pound. We always leave ourselves a small buffer, say £100. That gives us a bit of flexibility if we go slightly over budget. And if that buffer goes untouched for a few months in a row, we don't just let it sit there. We move some of it into our sinking funds, pension, or investments while still keeping enough of a buffer for the months ahead. Over time, that naturally helps us spend more intentionally and save more without really noticing. And that's really the 5-step system we use to manage our money every month. Most people spend first and save whatever's left. We do the opposite, save first, then spend what's left. That's the approach that helped us go from constantly worrying about money to finally feeling in control of it. Alongside that system, there are 2 actual rules that have made a real difference to our finances. They are not part of the monthly process, but they help protect the system we've just talked about. The first rule is simple: avoid high interest debt whenever you can. Every pound you pay in interest is a pound that can't go towards your savings or investments. That's why we try to avoid carrying a credit card balance from one month to the next, taking out high-interest personal loans, or financing things we simply can't afford. If we can't comfortably afford something, we usually do one of the 2 things. Either we wait or we buy a version we can genuinely afford. For example, if we needed a new laptop but couldn't comfortably afford the one we wanted, we'd either buy a cheaper model or wait until we'd saved enough to buy it. The second rule is to treat any bonuses or unexpected income as future money. We don't see it as extra spending money. Instead, we ask ourselves, what's the best way this money can improve our future? Quite often, that means putting it towards our investments, topping up a sinking fund, or another long-term goal. Of course, if we genuinely need some of it, we'll use it. But we try not to let one-off income quietly become everyday spending, because that's how lifestyle's inflation creeps in. Over the years, these 2 rules have helped us protect everything we've built. So that's it, the 5-step system we use every month to save more, plus the 2 rules that help make it work over the long term. We're not chasing a perfect budget or a life where we can't enjoy anything. We just know where our money is going, and saving and investing have become part of our routine. If you found this helpful, please give the video a like and subscribe for more practical videos on money, investing, and building wealth. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.